All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for tuning in this evening. We'll give a couple of people a few minutes to get on. In the meantime, let's just talk a little bit about some current events because tonight's show is going to be about how those current events are affecting everybody. So, was reading the paper earlier, and of course, the big news is always going to be something about coronavirus and something about wearing masks or washing hands and doing those things that we need to do to make sure that we're all staying safe. I'm gonna skip that just for a second because I normally do an intro. So let me at least tell folks who I am. This is the Ladies Lounge with Wonder Low. And on this one, I call this one, oh, there's my other lady. There she goes. There she goes. We get on in the room. Hey, hey,
Hey,
how
how are
you
you?
doing?
Good to
I'm
see
good.
you.
Good.
I'm good. How are you, ladies?
Good. Just
Nuggets
introduce
is
myself right
fine.
now. All right. This is the latest now after dark with Wonder Low. We're on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're always live here on Facebook so that we can reach out and touch the masses and get the word out and talk about different things that are going on in the community. If this is your first time watching, let me give you a little background. For 2 years, I was on a local radio station and I had a 30-minute show, and we talked about everything we could under the sun. And I so enjoyed it. I love the radio station, but I wanted to do something where we could talk a little bit more freely and we can talk about a little bit more, a few more subjects. So I decided to do an hour show on Facebook Live on social media so that I could reach a lot more people. We could talk about a few more things and I could have some extra guests. So I'm so happy to have people that are keeping up with the show, that are still watching after all this time, that are tuning in every Tuesday and keeping up with what we're talking about, and that are sharing our posts and liking them and also supporting our page. So that's one way that you can support us is find me on Facebook, and it's under the Ladies Lounge Wonder Low. You can also find us on Instagram, and there is a YouTube channel. So if you are interested in watching any of our old videos, you want to see some of the old shows, just to see some of the guests and hear about some of the topics, please go on to those platforms and like those shows, share the videos, watch the videos, and please leave your comments if you wish. Um, just like any other show tonight, we have the panel, and they're going to be able to answer questions toward the end of the show. We want to make sure that we get as much information and much discussion as we can done before we start taking questions. But I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome anybody that's watching tonight. Thank you for whoever's tuning in and watching now. And thank you for all the support that you have had for us for the last 2 years. Now, that was a mouthful. So having said all of that, I want to make sure that we can talk as long as we can, especially about our topic tonight. I want to go ahead and we're going to do a brief introduction. What I'm going to do is just read just a tiny bit of each lady's bio for tonight, and then I want you to go into the comments. If you're looking at the comments or you'll go to my page, you can read the full bios on each lady. And then after I read their bios or my little part of it, I want each one of them to tell us a little bit more about themselves. Talk about your specialty or the area that you work most in, or talk about something that you can tell your personal, whatever you want to tell, but something that you can share with everybody so they can get to know you just a little bit better. Now, I did say we are going to talk about current events first, so let me do that first because that kind of sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about later on tonight. Always in the news, of course, like I said at the beginning, is stuff about COVID-19 or coronavirus, however you want to put it. And looking at our numbers for the day, and this is from the health department. So if you see me looking off, I'm working on two screens right now. Statewide numbers for the day, it says for July 28, 2020, we have 40,181 total cases, 6,565 active cases. And this is my number. My favorite number is 33,188 recoveries. And as of today, we added 734 new cases. The testing rate is still 487,692. Over 447,000 people have tested negative, which is an awesome, you want to hear that. The positivity rate has been about 8.2%, and sadly, the total deaths have been 428. Again, that's going to be one of those things that we touch on when we get into our discussion because those numbers affect us all, whether they affect you positively or negatively or however, we're all affected by those numbers. We're also affected by other current events that are going on. If you've been keeping up with any of the protesting that's going on in Portland, As of today, I believe, according to USA Today, Portland protesters, Wall of Moms, sue Trump administration over use of tear gas and rubber bullets. Now, I will say that there have been several triggers when you're watching any of those videos from the protest. I saw one the other day where a young lady was shot literally in the forehead with a rubber bullet, and it left a hole. I mean, it's really graphic, and it's sometimes you can't watch that kind of stuff, and I try to limit how much of it I take in. So this group of moms, which they're calling the Wall of Moms, they're suing because they feel like the use of federal agents against common people or regular citizens is just wrong, especially when they're peacefully protesting. So that's going to be something that plays into our conversation tonight. Also, you have to think about what's going on in Little Rock school districts. I live in Saline County now, Saline County school districts, all across Arkansas, where you have school districts that are now being told, hey, these kids have to go back to school in August. Well, you have parents that are dealing with, how do I educate my kids and go to work and pay bills at the same time? So that's another thing that's going to play into what we talk about tonight. So that's just a handful of some of the current events that are going on and some of the things that are affecting us right now. And when we get into our discussion, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot more stuff that we can think of that people are dealing with. So just keep those things in the back of your mind. And remember, if you want to make any comments or you have any questions, please go in the comment section over to the side and make sure that you post those questions and those comments, and we appreciate it. Now, I got to introduce my beautiful panel of professional, intelligent, accomplished women. This is Black Girl Magic at its best right here. So I got to introduce these ladies. And honestly, I'm going to go with the new kid on the block. I'll go with her first. We're going to introduce Miss Cecily Alexander Williams. Now, let me make this bigger because I have to put on my glasses because I can't see good. So let's make this as big as I can make it so I can see the words. There we go. There we go. Cecily is a 2006 graduate of Henderson State University, where she received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Business Administration, focusing on finance, and minored in psychology. She decided to further her education by getting her Master's of Science degree in Mental Health Counseling from Capella University. She is currently pursuing a doctorate in clinical psychology and hopes to expand her practice to the working states as well as obtain the Cecily Williams is currently a licensed professional counselor in Arkansas, but her work does not stop there. From researching disorders in her surroundings to branching out in other states and cities around America, Cecily has made her unforgettable mark on those she has networked with and provided therapy for. Welcome to the show, Miss Cecily Williams, because you're the new kid. I had to go and introduce you first. All right.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm glad that you had time to spend with us this evening. Now, I can introduce, these are my veterans, I call them so.
Yes.
Yes. We're going to introduce next Reverend Dr. Barbara LaToison. And I love to say your last name. Reverend LaToison was born in Wilmot, Arkansas, and grew up at John Wesley AME Zion Church. Her work in the church began at 13 when she accepted Jesus as her Savior. In 1976, at 21 years of age, she became the youngest delegate ever seated in the General Conference of the African Methodist Episcopal AME Zion Church. Go ahead now. She currently serves as pastor of Grace Temple AME Zion Church in Little Rock, Arkansas. She previously served as co-pastor of Holy Ghost pastor of Walls Chapel in Houston and St. Mark AME Zion Church in Dallas, Texas. Presiding elder of the Houston, San Antonio, and the Dallas-Fort Worth district, as well as president of the Presiding Elders Council. She has been a faculty member at Southern Reformed Seminary and Houston Graduate School of Theology, both in Houston and Texas. Welcome back, Lady Bug. Glad to have you on tonight. All right, and last but certainly not least, this is the woman I can say that actually started all of this. Because I think I met you and I said, who do you know would be good at coming on and talking about different mental health things? And that's how I met Cecily. Met her through Dr. Flowers. So my next guest is Dr. Theresa D. Flowers. Dr. Flowers is now licensed social worker, right?
Clinical social worker, yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I get that right. Licensed clinical social worker, and is the owner therapist of Seed of Faith Counseling Services, LLC. She is a native of Nashville, Arkansas. Dr. Flowers earned her Bachelor of Social Work from Philander Smith College, Master of Social Work degree in direct practice with mental health clients from the University of Texas at Arlington, and earned her Doctor of Philosophy in Social Work from Adelphi University. Lady, thank you so much for coming back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now,
thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, anytime. I want to give each of you a chance to kind of just give a little bit more information about yourself, and whichever one of y'all want to go first is fine. Okay, don't everybody go at once.
Go, Cicely.
Volunteer somebody.
Theresa, would be you, wouldn't it? Okay, I'll go ahead and go first. So, as Ms. Lowe mentioned earlier, Cicely Williams. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Arkansas. I also have G&J Counseling, which is part-time private practice here in Arkadelphia. You can find it on Facebook. I am a mother and a wife. My husband is Pastor Herschel Williams of Gennesaret here in Arkadelphia. I have two beautiful children. Gabrielle is 15, JR is 12. I mostly work with children in a school-based setting in Malvern, and I also work with women and men actually, who have their children are currently in DHS custody and they're going through the necessary steps to get them back. And like you said earlier, I am starting the journey to my doctorate this fall in hopes to become a psychologist. And I have a minor in psychology, which kind of sparked my interest in the field. I went into finance, but then towards the end of that undergrad, I started minoring in psychology, and it sparked my interest in this. And I also grew up with an uncle who had schizophrenia. So I've always had a love for mental health and behavior and how the environment affects behavior. So thank you guys for having me, and I'm excited about this show.
All right, thank you.
I'm Barbara Latoisson, and I am pastor of Grace Temple AME Zion Church here in Little Rock, and I am what's called the middle judicatory leader. I'm presiding elder of the Little Rock Hot Springs District, and so I am involved in community work, church work. I'm a chaplain at UAMS, and I am launching my own coaching business, Barbara for Better, helping us learn how to transform those things that have happened to us in our past, helping us improve in areas that we have just allowed the enemy to overcome us in, and to empower us to be able to move on and do the things that we need to do.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here.
I'm Dr. Theresa Flowers, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Currently, I tend to be a person who has their hands in many pots. And so I currently am the mental health consultant for Job Corps, which I really enjoy working with that population. My specialty is with children and adolescents with mental health and behavioral problems. And within the past couple of years, I realized I'm actually a trauma therapist. And so I've been spending a lot of time getting more training and trauma modalities such as brain spotting and trauma-focused CBT. And so working with children and adolescents with trauma. And from that process, I've really learned that a lot of people, a lot of the issues and challenges that we see usually is rooted in some form of trauma that has never been addressed or dealt with. And so I'm also a hospital social worker. I work at Arkansas Children's Hospital part-time. And like Cicely, I also work with parents who've had their children taken and who go through the process to do counseling and among other things so that they can successfully reunite with their children. And I also conduct home studies for people who are trying to adopt. So I do those through the state and also privately. And so more recently, I'm really looking at something similar to what I just heard Dr. Barbara say, that looking at doing some coaching I find that I end up doing it a lot. People will reach out to me and ask me these questions and all of this stuff. And so it's something I think I'm going to add to my practice because I see the benefit of it. And I also recognize that some people are more open to coaching than they are counseling.
Right.
And so it is a difference and it's a boundary. So making sure that people recognize and respect that boundary, that if you come to me for coaching, you're going to get a coach, not a counselor. But working with children and families is something that I've done my entire career. And so I really enjoy working with the kiddos. I believe, I don't want to misquote it. I think it was Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong kids than to repair broken men. And so I truly see that and believe that if we can get kids young when they're experiencing these things and help them learn how to deal and manage with the challenges of life, then I believe we see better results for them as adults versus dealing with adults who haven't dealt with all this stuff. You have a pile-on effect, so it's more challenging and people get set in their ways. So I'm excited to be here. I love doing this and hearing the perspectives from other people. And this is part of something I always want to do to make sure that I can help spread information to my community and to people who have questions and to help break the stigma around mental health and really get a better understanding of this is just like our physical health. It's just as important.
Now, I'm going to ask a question that probably everybody else is asking. When do y'all sleep? Is it all y'all got 16 jobs?
And you do?
Me too, I know.
With all the and bacon that you do the same time you do.
Exactly. Look, I need counseling. Something is wrong with doing too much stuff. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here and your willingness to even talk about it. And like you said, remove the stigma and to just give information and make sure that people have resources so that they know that if they're going through a crisis, if they're dealing with some type of trauma, there is some place for them to go, and there are people that actually really care about what's going on with them. Now, I want to preference the show with these are our opinions, because people hear things and we say things and they take it and go, oh, it was the gospel truth. These are our opinions, and whatever I say during this show is my opinion. And you can agree with it or you can't agree with it, or if you don't want to, you don't have to. But I want to make sure that people understand that we're not counseling, we're talking. And it's a discussion. And they're going to give information. They're going to give you some tips and some pointers later on. And those things, please do take seriously. But don't get twisted about what we say tonight. Don't, let it be something that you argue about or have a miscommunication about. These are our opinions about different stuff. So let me start off with saying why I wanted to do this show. A couple of weeks ago, we did a show on mental health before. And I felt like we didn't get a chance to kind of finish that conversation. There was a whole lot of more stuff that we could have talked about. But then you go back and you look at in recent, just stuff that's happened recently, like I said, about current events. I think when we had that show, the protest hadn't started yet, if I'm not mistaken. Since then, we've had protests here in Arkansas, all over the place. We had protests all across the country. You've seen a lot more stuff happening. More people are on unemployment. More people are suffering abuse. More children are going through different difficulties. You have kids that are still maybe not eating because they're not in school on a regular basis. You've had just this whole plethora of things that have happened since we did that last show. And I wanted to just have this one tonight to give people a chance that, like I said, if you're listening or you're watching and you want to leave a comment, please do, because we do want to know what's on your mind. And that's why I titled the show, What's on Your Mind, Mental Health and Current Events, because there's so much stuff going on. There are so many different traumas and crises and whatever else you want to call it going on right now. So I want to make sure that we had a safe place that if people want to come in and you want to comment, you want to talk, if there's a way for you to contact one of the ladies for counseling or coaching after the show, that we all make sure that that information is available to everybody. So with that being said, let's kind of kick off with our questions. And this is a broad question. You all can answer in whatever order you want to, but what are some of the things you're seeing in the community that may be affecting our mental health? And I know that's like this big. But if you can think of the things that you are seeing, maybe more your clients are coming in complaining about or talking about, not complaining, that's a bad word, I'm sorry. But more people are coming in and saying, I have this particular issue, or here's what I'm dealing with. What are some of those things that you're seeing a lot of right now?
I'll start. One of the things that I want to point out, and probably more so just because my own family recently experienced it, is that life is still happening.
Yes.
With the protests, with COVID-19, unemployment, life is still happening. So people are still getting sick from regular everyday things, and people are still dying from everyday incidents or things that had happened before. And I share that like exactly a month ago, my 15-year-old nephew was killed by a drunk driver. And so it really brought to the forefront that, oh, wow, all this other stuff is happening, but life is still happening. And so to manage around that, and I believe at one point we kind of talked about the difference in that, to experience firsthand planning a funeral and having a few hundred people who had to stand outside of a church with a speaker because of COVID and not being allowed to be in the service, and having to make that decision, you know, to tell people, hey, we love you, we thank you for coming, but you can't come in. This is immediate family, friends. So things like that, working at the hospital where families are frustrated and upset because, you know, hospital has policies now, visitations, and there's a limitation where, you know, only one person can be in, and certain exceptions can be made, but these are everyday life occurrences that people are still using drugs, you know, working with clients. Recently had some clients who are going to prison, and, you know, it's one thing to be going to prison. It's another thing to be going to prison with COVID. And seeing that in the state, our numbers are super high in the prison setting, and hearing reports and stories from family members that people aren't being treated appropriately, people are dying and no one is communicating with them. And so that's one aspect that I haven't really heard people talk about as much. And so it really is, it adds an additional layer to just everyday life of how do you manage around that part. And then, of course, with school getting ready to start, you know, I have young nieces and nephews. My niece is going to kindergarten, and my sister has 3 kids and she works. I'm concerned. I'm like, she doesn't really have that option to say, oh, I'm going to work overnight and stay home and teach her and still work with my 3-year-old and deal with a newborn. Like, these are real life, everyday things that people are having to make choices about. And so the concern about what are schools really going to do and how are they going to manage this? Is it necessary? And from my stance of really looking at it from a real world perspective, like you said, people got to work. You know, everybody can't get in unemployment. Like, we're maxing our system, our social system out. And so people still have to do these things. So what does that look like? It does look like our children are going to be going to school, and what policies and safeguards will be put into place to manage that. And I guess another layer of that, Cicely and I both have worked in school settings, so we know that that implicit bias and things of that nature that might exist, how is that going to factor into keeping kids safe? Because unfortunately, I really don't want to, I'm not painting with a broad stroke, but I'm being honest. There are some people who work in school districts who don't like kids, and they don't like kids who have any challenges, any behavioral problems, who can't sit still for longer than 5 or 10 minutes, which, by the way, is normal and typical when you understand childhood development and human behavior. But I'm really concerned about those kids. I'm really concerned about those kids with behavioral problems who we've had to witness be put in holds and things of that nature. What does this look like for our kids who are in those behavioral classes and settings? And it's just a lot of things that come up to who's making these decisions, because I don't remember that lady name. People who don't make sense, I don't give them space in my head. but that Lady Trump put into place up there.
Oh Lord, her. Yes.
Yeah, her.
Yeah, her.
She
We
doesn't.
refer to her as her.
Yeah, she doesn't use common sense, and so I have no faith that the person who's supposed to be leading and guiding our education system is going to be able to give us something that we can have any measure of faith in or trust and belief that they're going to do what's in the best interest of kids overall. So that's my kind of take on some of the things that I've heard people talk about and things that I've seen and processed within myself about what does this mean, even for us at Job Corps, what that looks like for us as far as students coming back and all of that. It's just really, really interesting. And it's not an easy, there's no easy answer.
Exactly. Okay, ladies.
I want to say some of the things that I'm seeing, some of the things that I hear, especially in the church, some of the older people and even some of the younger people, loneliness. That's a word that I hear often. And I think that our children are using the word bored to define loneliness, because even though we still have all of these things on Zoom, FaceTime, whatever the platform is that you use, it's still not the same as having face-to-face human contact with another person. And so our children are dealing with this, like this is something we've never seen, but we're adults, but they're children, and this is something that they've never seen. Well, not being able to go to certain, friends' houses or go to different events or whatnot. And even though they don't speak on it, they may have some concerns about going back to school as well. Also, kind of piggybacking a little bit off of what Dr. Flowers said about working in the school setting, and we've seen children with behavioral issues being put in hold. Also, I want to mention, you mentioned earlier about the protests, all the reason that these protests are happening, things that are going on between different races, things that are being spoken in households. We don't know what's being said in different households. When children goes back to school, they do go back to the classroom setting, and they have a teacher that doesn't look like them. How are they going to respond to that teacher? They're going to need somebody to be able to, bridge the gap between them and that teacher. Things that they've heard throughout this entire pandemic about things going on all over the world. Also, as far as loneliness, my father-in-law, he is recently placed in a nursing home, and you know that you can't have visitors coming in. You can only see him through the window or talk to him on the phone and whatnot. And so a lot of the people in nursing homes are really, going through something very difficult right now, not being able to touch or be close with their family, just being there in nursing home. So, and also me, I'm the type of person that uses a schedule. I like to live life by a schedule. I know that things happen that throw you off your schedule. You have to be able to monitor and adjust. However, not knowing what's in the future, I can't imagine what that is doing to some other people who may not have the skills to deal with that. Just not knowing what to expect from day to day. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing on my end.
Okay.
And I'm seeing similar things, particularly with my church members. Many of them, some of them have a really deep fear, because and I had one of my members say, I fought in the Vietnam War, and I'm more afraid of this than he said, at least there I could see my enemy and I felt like I had a chance. Not being able to see your enemy and know what you're dealing with, just have people's equilibrium off. And then you roll over and you're in the hospital, and you're dealing with family members who can't come in to see their loved ones. They're having major surgeries. They're not COVID related, but the policy is you can't come into the hospital unless they are end of life uncomfort care. And then, and so you are just totally isolated from what's going on with your family. I went into a patient's room yesterday, and he's getting ready to have major surgery. No family can come in, just feeling totally isolated, nobody there for them, and you just needed somebody to talk to, you know, and then for the talking with people who are dealing with the protest and all that is going on, they're just feeling numb and empty and fearful. I mean, it's just a lot of emotions that are going on with people around all of the different things that's going on. We have the pandemic, we have protests, we have political unrest, you name it, we have it going on in America right now. And it is unsettling, to say the least. And Cicely said that, Cicely or Theresa said that, you know, our children, we don't know what our children are hearing in their homes and how they're going to respond when they have someone that doesn't look like them. For me, the greater fear is what biases are those teachers bringing to the classroom, and how are they going to escalate things that are going on? So, I mean, there's just a lot. I told my daughters that if they sent my grandkids back to school, that I was going to take them. I was going to take them to court and accuse them. Because, I mean, I just feel like it is so unsafe. Can you imagine trying to keep kids 6 feet away, not touching?
Not gonna work.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. And then the people that's making the decision are doing making the decisions via Zoom. But it's safe for the kids to go back to school. So there's some illogical thinking that is going on here. Yes, our kids do need to go to school, but we need to find a way for them to be safer before we allow them back into the school. I saw a news article, and it listed 20 things that teachers and parents need to think about when they're sending their kids back to school. And there were 2 that really, I mean, I thought were hilarious. One of them said, if a school can't control lice, how are they going to control the coronavirus? Yeah. And then another one said that the janitors can't keep the bathroom clean. How are they going to sanitize
the entire
school? Yeah. So those are things that we need to think about, and we need to think about seriously.
Yeah.
And let's not even talk about the frustration that people are dealing with as they think about the leadership that we have on Pennsylvania Avenue right now. So.
Can I just add, and thinking about this, because it's a different feeling when a crisis or trauma comes into the hospital and everybody goes full guard. You know, I'm fortunate as a social worker, I don't have to, because I don't have to be in the trauma room. However, when I see those nurses, those doctors that I work with who, people were debating who's considered frontline workers. And I'm just like, yes, we have a lot of people. The cashier is a frontline worker because they are interfacing with everybody all day long. However, when you have these people who have to wear this stuff anyway, when they do surgery, but now you have this extra layer of they have to put all of this stuff to the back of their mind and focus on saving this patient and, based on whatever their injuries are. So the mental health will be one of the number one things that is the result of everything we're witnessing. And so for those people who don't understand mental health, who believes it's not real, who says people should just get over it, this is going to be the number one thing that we're going to have to adjust to. And insurance companies, jobs, everybody's going to have to learn to do things a little more different to make it more accessible to everybody. Because if we don't, the suicide rates, they're already going up, but that's going to be the next pandemic. Mental health is going to be the next pandemic after the pandemic and the race riots and all of that, because it is too much our systems can only handle so much, and you're not able to shut down. People have to go to work now. People have to go do these things now. And while there are certain things that are being put into place, and the people who we need the most, let's be clear, you need your medical staff to be well, because it's a small specialized group of people. It's an even smaller specialized group of people who look like us. That's a whole nother conversation about the issues and challenges of medical care for people of color due to the history that's proven in this country, because our country has told us, hey, we used you as test tube dummies. We used you as experiments, and we lied to you about this. And so the vaccine that's coming out, and a lot of Black folks like, no, thank you. I'm going to stick to my elderberry tea, my ginger, and my zinc and all of that. And so I think that these conversations are really, really important. And we keep it in mind because it's so many factors and facets of this thing. But mental health is going to be the next big pandemic that we're going to deal with. And so I could tell you now, we already don't have enough people to serve our mental health population. And so that's going to be a challenge within itself. I can see how schools can try to profit off this and push people through. And Cicely, you can attest to this. If people are not ready, I'm sure you've encountered some interns that you were like, no, no, you're not ready. You're not ready. And so, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of this stuff. But I see some of the stress with our medical staff that they're experiencing, because they are having to battle this and then go home with their families. And what happens once you get sick, one of the scariest things is to get an email saying, hey, you worked this shift, you potentially came in contact with someone. Having to constantly make that decision and reevaluate. Am I going to keep doing this? do I want to keep this job? Because it's a real concern. It is definitely a real concern. And so I think that's a population that, they've been mentioned, but I think sometimes it's like, oh, well, they should be fine. It's like, no, psychologically, the capacity it takes to do that high level of work that they do, and then to have to deal with this level of stress, it's just a lot, and your system can only take so much.
Yeah, I can see that.
And when you add to that the stress of being in the medical profession, you have more doctors committing suicide than percentage-wise than the normal population.
Yep. So, alcoholism.
Yes.
Drugs.
Yes.
Yep.
All of those things are major. So, it's going to be intense. It is definitely going to be intense, and we need to be prepared to deal with it. And I applaud Dr. Flowers for moving into that trauma care, because it's going to be a major need coming out of this pandemic.
I want to hit on one thing that I think all of y'all mentioned in some way or fashion is the grieving process right now. I made a post, it's probably been about a week or so ago, after I had a friend that we grew up with years ago, who was murdered by her ex-husband a couple of weeks ago. And the day I got that phone call, I was also dealing with another friend who had lost a parent. And I think a relative had just passed. And I was sitting on the couch and I just cried for a little while because, for one, because of what's going on, I knew that I couldn't get to those funerals. And I actually felt guilty and felt like a bad friend / relative because I couldn't go to them. And I think that there's a lot of people who are dealing with losses, especially when it's a death in the family and it was somebody that you were close to, that maybe you cannot travel now to come home because Arkansas is on the hot list. So if you come here, you got to get quarantined. If you leave here, you got to get quarantined. So you have a lot of people that are probably feeling really guilty about how we have to grieve now. Now, we did have a close, well, she's a friend of mine, but she's actually a relative of my husband's, the other day, that we did get a chance to at least go to the family hour and to be around the family at that time. But all of those times before, when you have a friend who loses a parent and you have another relative that passes, and this stuff was just happening so fast that I had that moment where I had to sit down and cry. I had to release it because it was just too much to deal with. And the fact again, because you can't go and you can't comfort and you can't be around people the way that we normally are, that we're used to doing, that puts a whole nother level of stress on you and a whole nother level. Honestly, I felt guilty about it because I felt like I was being a bad friend. I wasn't, because I didn't show up. Of course, I called and we talked and all that stuff, but it's something to be in there. And when you have all of this going on and you can't really be there for folks, then it does make you feel bad. Now, I don't have kids, switching to the school district thing. I don't have kids in the school district, but I have grandkids in the school district. And honestly, as a grandparent, I don't want my grandkids to go to school, but I also know that my children have to go to work. You know, they have to go to work. They have bills to pay. They have responsibilities. So I know that, you know, when they got their letter or whatever the notification was a couple of weeks ago from the school district that only gave them a week to make this big of a decision. That means that you have a whole 5 days that you can sit there and go, okay, will you work and I stay home, or do we both stay home, or do we quit a job, or do I work at night, or however we have to do this to make sure that our children are safe. That's undue stress that I think that's placed on the parents. And it was unfair for it to be given to them technically at the last minute and for them to have to make a decision that quickly on something that big. Trying to think the other thing, the protest. I have gotten to a place where I have to turn off the news. I have all these news alert things that come on my phone. So at 2 a.m, it's dinging and I'm reading and then I get upset, then I can't sleep. So, and I feel like we're getting desensitized is what it really is, because you keep getting hit with this stuff. We're being bombarded with protests, and whether they're peaceful or not, it's the act of, you have the folks on the ground in Portland dressed in fatigues and covered all up, and they're taking people off the street and people don't know what's happening to them. You have federal agents attacking regular citizens. So it's just this whole big thing that this is turned into, to where it's taken away from what the initial cause of everything was. The initial cause was for us to fight for justice, you know, for us being killed in police brutality and all the things that happened to Black folks in the street. And now it's been turned into something totally different, not necessarily by us, but by the government that we voted for and put in the office at some level. And you're having to deal with all that stuff. And now you're dealing with having to choose. Election day can't come fast enough, because now you're stressed about who to vote for and are there good candidates that even have our best interests at heart. So I tell you what, being an adult right now ain't fun.
Right.
It's too much. It's too much. This adulting thing is hard right now for folks. So that gives me a segue into the next question. And I want to focus a little bit more on, you know, what do we think the effects of all of this is having on our children? And you all hit on it a little bit as far as the protest and going back to school. And I will say this, I thought it was an awfully low blow for all you. If you notice, you see commercials now with kids talking about going back to school. I don't think that they fully understand the danger that we see or we feel. And they use them in commercials to influence other kids to say, oh, I'm ready to go back to school. They don't understand what that means. They don't understand what that means for that single parent who has to now try to figure out, am I going to homeschool, or do I work, or do I stay at home? It's a lot more to it than that. And I just thought that's a low blow to use kids to now try to influence you and letting them go back to school when it's not healthy. And that lady whose name is DeVos, or DeVos, or however you say it, her don't have kids going back to school. And if you look at any of those people, their kids are in private school. Guess what they're doing? They're homeschooling.
They can afford teachers to come, and I've seen it here for some of the private institutions. People were saying, hey, I will tutor your kids and all of this, but you got to be able to pay for that. But this is something that people are forgetting as well. We live in Arkansas. Do y'all know the literacy rate in our state? And I'm not being funny. I'm being very serious. One of the things I learned, and I've seen it more in Texas than I've seen here, is that we have a lot of functionally illiterate people. Many people do not have the capacity to homeschool their kids. And let's be honest, I'm highly educated. Some of this stuff I see, I go, what? What is that? What do you want me to do with that? And so if I am in that space and I got a whole PhD, what
not a half one, a whole one.
A whole one. What do we
whole-
see people who barely passed high school, people who were in some of those classes where, working in school settings, I've worked in some very rural communities, and I've seen firsthand where we were passing kids through, and I would work with a 10th grader who was reading on a 2nd grade reading level, and I was infuriated because I'm like, how does this happen? Why is this happening? And so if this is happening already, how do we expect that a parent would, beyond the issue of, am I going to homeschool? Can I homeschool? And there are some people that their kids are going to be further behind if they are schooled from home because their parents can't read. They can, they can do basic day-to-day stuff, but they can't read.
Exactly.
And how you gonna teach somebody how to read if you can't read?
Exactly.
Right.
So you think about what level of stress is this putting on children when they're sitting there. Now, a kid knows better than we do that my mother, my father, or whoever is in the home with me, they can't read, they can't count. They know that they're not literate. So think about the stress that is on that child to even figure out how am I going to be educated. Now I'm like you, I got 2 whole degrees, and I was helping my grandsons who were in the kindergarten and first grade last year, and I was confused. And I've been reading on the 12th grade on an adult level since I was in elementary school, but some of the stuff that they had to do just did not make sense to me. So think about, like you said. The other part that is Arkansas has a very low rate of internet connections around the state. So how are you going to do online school? There's no internet in your area. Or
can you afford it if it is there?
You afford it. And the other part is, what if the only place you can get the internet is if you go to the public library? Well, what if that's not a feasible option for you? Because you're in a rural area. This is my thing, because I'm from a rural area. And this is the thing that always bugs me about any rules or anything that's made. You have to consider that in the rural areas, the socioeconomic level is very low. I may not have a car. I may not even have a phone. I definitely don't have internet connection. So when you're telling me that we're going to mandate that everybody do the same thing across the state, but you haven't put any infrastructure in place in order for me to be able to do that, and I live in Tiller, Arkansas, or I live outside of McGee, or I live down by Eudora, and I don't have access to those things, how am I supposed to educate my child then? What happens? Do you just leave those kids out? Do you just skip them over? How do they get the education that maybe we can get here because the kids can go to the library, or they can go and sit someplace on the commuter lot and get internet connection? What happens with those kids? And then what kind of mental health or mental stress is that putting on those children, particularly a child like me? I'm a nerd, so I want to go to school. I'm the one that's happy, to be at school. What happens to that child's thirst for learning if you take away all their opportunities to get it? What kind of stress is that also putting on the kids?
Right. And I want to chime in with my opinion, which might not be the most popular opinion, but I have children that are school age that will be going back to school. So if you are going to, choose to homeschool your children or do the virtual learning, which a lot of school districts are given the option right now, you can come in class or you can do the virtual. Then if you're going to do the virtual for fear of the coronavirus, then also we have to take into account, are your children still going to Walmart? Are they still eating at fast food restaurants? Are they still going over to their friend's house? Because it only takes one person to infect that child. It doesn't take a school full of children to infect that child. So if you are not going to send them to school for fear of the coronavirus, then you may need to make sure that they're not going to these other places either. But if you're going to take them to Walmart with you, you're going to let them eat McDonald's, you're going to let them go over their friends' houses, then why not allow them to go to school?
Now look, amen, go right there.
And amen.
You're right.
That's a good point.
It's a very good point. A very good point.
Go ahead.
But But then the flip side of that, it does only take one, but the more people you are around,
Constantly.
right, the more, the higher the percentage rate of you running into someone that is infected, it grows up exponentially. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. People who need the social interaction.
Yeah.
Homeschooling is not going to work as well for them. So, while there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration, when do we make the decision that the risk is too great?
Mhm.
I mean, we have to get to the point where we are measuring the risk of whether or not it is too great to send our kids to school. Now, if there's someone in the home who is immune compromised, who have underlying conditions, that if
Mhm.
that child goes out and comes back, even if they don't get it themselves, they carry it back to the
Yeah.
house. How are we going to deal with that? It's so much that needs to be taken into consideration before those kinds of decisions are made. And I know each family has to make a decision that is best for them.
Amen.
Right.
Okay. We have about 9 minutes to go. So I want to make sure that we get a chance for you all to talk about your programs and how people can get in touch with you, what resources you have available if someone is in need of counseling or in need of help. Kind of state like where your clinic is or where your counseling agency is. Dr. Twice, I'll make sure you mention your program that you have going on. So you all go ahead and take a few minutes, just talk about that real quick. Okay, somebody go. Cecily, go first.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go. Like I said, I have G&J Counseling. You can find that on Facebook and contact me there for counseling services. Also within the church, there's a group called Ladies Unity. Yes, it is ladies and young women, but we do talk about many challenges, mental health challenges, and it is in a church setting, but we do a lot of things in the community also. A friend of mine, Ashley Hunter, who is also a mental health therapist, we have a program called GLOW, and you can find her on Facebook, Ashley Hunter, and we work with teenage girls on an array of different things, mental health, career development, just connecting, different things like that. And also we have a program that was implemented by UAMS, and it is called Rejoice. And basically it kind of teaches you coping skills from the Bible. And we have that also available here at our church at Gennesaret in Arkadelphia.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
I'll go next. We'll leave Dr. Flowers for last. There are several ways that you can get in contact with me. Of course, the first is just reaching out to me, Barbara Latoisson, on Facebook, because right now, the things that I'm doing, I am doing virtually. I'm not doing any face-to-face contact right now. Even my church services are virtually. So we have the Grace Temple AME Zion Church Facebook page that you're more than welcome to like, and we'll be in contact with you and deal with you there. Grace Temple has a community outreach called Grace Point, where it is community conversations, where we have conversations and we talk about the things that we're dealing with and how to process them and how to move to another level. And then my private coaching is Barbara for Better, which is also a Facebook page. You can reach out for me there.
All right, thank
Barbara,
you.
the number 4, Better.
Okay.
Dr. Flowers?
I have an office here. I have not been seeing clients face to face, but Seed of Faith Counseling and Services. I'm located off of West Markham, but I also have a Facebook page, or you could go to my personal webpage, which is drflowerslcsw.com, and it provides information about the services that I provide. And so, also just wanting to share that Psychology Today is a good place to look if you're looking for a therapist. If you have a job, ask your job about their EAP, which is in the Employee Assistance Program. A lot of people miss out on that benefit. You usually get 3 to 6 free mental health sessions, so utilize that. I'm happy to help walk somebody through that process. And I try to post this information on my page, my Facebook page. Also, Black Girl Therapy for Black Girls. There's quite a few sites now that are geared toward people of color who are looking for therapists who look like them. I can't tell you, at least weekly, I'm getting calls from people who are saying, hey, I need a therapist and I seen your profile. So I know Cicely and I are in a bunch of mental health groups together that even when we're looking for people for our clients to potential clients who maybe we can't service for one reason or another, we're looking for referrals for them. And so we are out here. We exist. There are tons of Black therapists in the Central Arkansas area. And even for some of those rural communities, we exist. We've worked in those spaces. And with telehealth, a lot of insurance companies are allowing telehealth. And so really encouraging people to advocate for your own health. The same way I would tell you to find the right doctor for you, find the right mental health professional for you. Just going to therapy isn't enough. You need the right therapist. And that takes some work to find a match, but it's well worth it. So there are those resources. And I have some other resources I can email you for parents dealing with the anxiety for their kids, and a few activities and things of that nature that I'm sure all of us have utilized or come across that has been beneficial, because children are humans. They're little people with big feelings. And so I just wanted to say this because I think it's important for parents. Talk about your own fears, but in a age appropriate manner. It's okay for your kids to know that you're scared, that you're concerned, that it makes you nervous or it makes you sad. That's important. They learn from our modeling. And so my 5-year-old niece is really good about articulating her feelings because we talk to each other. I don't talk at her, I talk to her. And so talking to them and then learning coping skills together. Google is your friend. Like Google tips on how to manage anxiety and try a bunch of, sometimes you have to try stuff until it works. I always tell people find new tools to put in your toolbox until you find what works for you. And then find someone to talk to. I know Cicely and our friend and colleague Tasha Hart, I'm quick to send a text and be like, listen, I'm struggling. I'm having a moment. I know that, they're mental health professionals, but they're also women of faith. So I know they're going to pray for me, but I know they're also going to help me in the here and now with the practical stuff that, yes, I trust God. I believe God, but I'm stressed right now and I need some relief in this moment. So help me to think about stuff that I'm not going to think about because I'm stressed. And so find you someone who you can have those conversations with.
All right. Really quick before we come off, if you all will go ahead and post in the comments your contact information, name of your business and contact information. That way, if anybody wants to get it tonight, they'll be able to see it, to show up on the comments. And again, we have just a couple of minutes left, but I want to just say thank you before I let everybody go. Thank you all. I appreciate each and every one of you all for coming on tonight. I think that you all three are women of faith. I appreciate the fact that y'all have a heart for helping people who are struggling. And I think more people, if we have more doctors or more therapists like you, we might be a little bit better off. But thank you all so much for what you do, and especially in the churches, in the hospitals, in the community. Thank you for all of the activities that you're into. So make sure you go ahead and post your contact information if you can. And if not, if you'll send it to me, then I'll post it that way so people can get it. But thank you all for staying with us tonight, for tuning in and listening to another show or watching another show. I had a person on YouTube watch. Yay! That's the first one. I don't know your name, but thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all. Make sure that you come back next week. We hit on it a little bit tonight, but next week we're going to delve deeply into talking to some teachers and some educators about what it looks like to educate your kids at home, and then what it looks like maybe if they have to go to school. But we want to make sure that we always give the best information, have the people on that are educated in this area, because it's not my expertise. My job is to talk to y'all, or bring y'all so y'all can talk. So and I listen. So and I learn something every time that I have a guest on. But again, thank you all so much for tonight. I appreciate you. Appreciate you, and hope that you'll come back again. And now, Cicely, you are now a veteran. So you've gotten your first show out of the way. So expect calls in the future. You'll be back again. And I thank you all so much. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. And again, we say thank you to those of you who watched on YouTube and on Facebook tonight. Make sure that you tune in again next week for the latest Lounge After Dark with Wanda Lowe. I'm your host, and we'll be back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. So we'll see you then. And thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.